Georgia.
Good morning, Mike.
Top of the morning, Georgina. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Did you get settled at Waterman's Inn?
Yes, what a nice place.
Oh, yes, it has been a top 10 Chesapeake favorite for over 100 years. The captain is in a jolly mood. Your first meeting must have gone well.
I'm glad to hear that, Georgie. So far, so good. Has he gone to see the wizard this morning?
Yes, he said to send you to the same spot.
Good. By the way, Georgie, would there be a problem for you if the captain and I went into town sometime?
No problem, Mike. It would be good for him to get away. I only ask that you let us know when and how long you expect to be gone. Is that agreeable?
Certainly, Georgie. I'll keep you advised.
Mike saw that the captain was reading.
Good morning, Captain. I hope I'm not disturbing you.
Good morning, Mike. No disturbance. I was reviewing the Chimango Pilot's Handbook. How are they treating you at Waterman's Inn?
Excellent, thanks. Nice place and excellent seafood.
Ah, yes, one of the best restaurants on the bay for oysters, crabs, clams, or rockfish, Mike. Most of the local watermen are either related to Bob Walschmidt or are good friends. So you can be sure everything is fresh caught. Plus, Mark, Bob's uncle, is one of the best seafood chefs around. It ain't cheap, but shyster lawyers can afford it.
Easy, Captain. Not all lawyers are bad guys.
Quite right, of course, Mike. It's just the 99% who give the rest a bad name. Do you know why sharks won't eat attorneys?
Professional courtesy. Very funny, Captain.
Well, Mike, you didn't have anything nice to say about the puking dogs yesterday, did you?
Touché, Captain. Glad to see you're reviewing your Chimango handbook. I hope it means there's a chance we'll be flying.
There's a 15-knot wind this morning and a 30% chance of rain this afternoon. Those outer wing panels weigh 80 pounds, so you don't want to practice spreading or folding them in a breeze or rain. It looks better for tomorrow, but don't get your hopes too high, Mike.
Great! I'm looking forward to it very much, Captain. Shall we return to your story then? It's late 1943, and I believe you were about to move from Colorado to Georgia, right?
Yes, Columbus, Georgia, near Fort Benning, where the paratroopers were trained. So there was lots of testosterone flowing around town, which brought them into conflict with the cops. No good reason for them being so macho, though. The only requirement for being a parachutist is to be heavy enough to fall out of an airplane.
What was it like for you to return to the South at age 11, Captain?
Good in some ways, near disaster in other ways. At least we were no longer staying at a motel. For the first 4 years, we lived in a 2-bedroom brick duplex on the perimeter of a playground in a project called Baker Village, 10 miles outside Columbus. Father went back to leading a dance band at the Officers Club 3 nights a week, and Mother went to work at the Post Exchange. I was as glad to be more on my own again as were they. I got a morning paper route delivering to 110 customers, on foot at 5 a.m., then back in the afternoons to try to collect weekly bills. I walked the 5-mile route until I earned $17 for a bicycle. I was gaining ground toward facilitating my escape. A good part of my route was in a black neighborhood. It was a good experience. They were good customers and accepted me as a matter of fact. Later in my 4 years with the route, my pal Joe Davidson and I were welcomed in their small neighborhood bar, where they sold us cigars and cheap peach muscatel wine, which of course made us quite ill. I had a low digestive tolerance of alcohol for many years after that introduction.
So you had some insight of what life was like for the blacks there then, Captain?
Not really, Mike, just a superficial impression from a white kid's perspective. Blacks were largely regarded as subhuman and were excluded from the white culture, except as a source of cheap labor. Everything, including water fountains, were segregated, whites only or blacks only. Otherwise, blacks seemed to be pretty much left alone in the rural area where we lived, and they appeared to be fairly well adapted to that. They seemed to find happiness in simple ways that white folks are never able to experience as well.
Was your friend Joe an Army brat too?
Joe was as much a real traditional Southerner as it was possible to be. His family owned a huge plantation with thousands of acres on Esquiline Hill near Fort Benning, which had been a working farm with many slaves before the Civil War. There were remains of the slave cabins, and the family still lived in their declining Gone with the Wind type mansion. Joe's father had passed away, so as the man of the house, he worked at their small grocery store near Baker Village. When we were old enough to own shotguns, Joe, Jerry, Max, and I often went on weekend camping and hunting trips on Joe's property. Though we said we were hunting rabbits and squirrels, we shot anything that moved, almost including each other on one occasion when a rabbit ran between us. I joined the Boy Scouts, too.
What was Joe's attitude toward blacks?
Good question, Mike. I saw no sign of bigoted prejudice in him. As I mentioned, he went with me to the Black Bar, plus we hung out at a small grocery store owned by an old black man named Henry, who was quite a cracker barrel philosopher. One day, for example, we got into a discussion about whether or not it was a sin just to think of sinning. His answer was, "You can't stop the birds from flying overhead, but you can stop them from building nests in your hair." Sorry to say, though, that Joe and I didn't always take Henry's wise counsel to heart. One night, we lit a candle with rags and twigs at the base in the corner of one of his abandoned old slave cabins and went to the movies at the village theater for an alibi. When we came out and looked toward Esquiline Hill, nothing was happening, so we assumed the candle had gone out and went home. About 2 a.m., however, I was awakened by sirens. There was the glow of a huge fire in the woods on the hill, so I got dressed and rode my bike to the scene. Joe was already there as we watched the house burn to the ground.
Were you caught?
No, Mike, it was a perfect crime. Joe and I never spoke of it, but I'm sure he felt even worse about it than I did. It might have been better for me if we had been caught. The consequences might have straightened out my sociopathic tendencies. Except for extreme good fortune, the thrill I got from taking dangerous, antisocial risks very nearly got me into serious trouble at several points right up to the day I was commissioned. Not sure how much I want to discuss those events, though. We'll see.
Understood, Captain. How was school?
Terrible. The Baker Village Grammar School was a county school. Most of the kids were bussed in from farms, so there was little interaction. Georgia had an 11-grade system instead of 12, no doubt reflecting the population's attitude toward education versus the need for the kids at home on the farms. Colorado had a 12-year system, of course, and grades were pass-fail. So Georgia had me skip the 6th grade, which put me back where I would have been if I hadn't been held back a year in Panama. Academics weren't much of a challenge. Still, I was a C student. The consistent comments on my report cards were, "whispers too much," and "could do much better." Neither of my parents had finished high school, and no one on either side of the family ever attended college, so there weren't great expectations or encouragement of me at home. Girls mature early in the South. Several of my 7th grade female classmates had already been married or pregnant. 2 others were sent to reform school. One of the boys was an ex-Marine who was bedding one of the 3 teachers we had that year. That teacher was fired, but the other 2 quit, literally ran out of the classroom under a barrage of spitballs we fired at them. Sweet revenge for that kindergarten bitch I had in Portland. One academic anomaly for me was winning the school spelling competition, then placing 4th in the county finals.
Sounds like total anarchy. Did you attend church, Captain?
The Ascension miracle may have been that when Christ was taken down from the cross, it was discovered that he was still living. Remember, the Roman soldiers had refrained from breaking Christ's legs as required in crucifixions. To assure the Romans that he was dead, Christ's followers proceeded with his burial. He was then rescued from the sepulchre, taken away into hiding, and nursed back to health. The few who saw Jesus naturally believed that he had risen from the dead. He had, in fact, returned from the grave. Since the Romans would surely make certain of his death if it was known that he was alive, it was necessary to keep the truth a close secret and get Jesus out of town to a place where he would never again be seen publicly. According to Thiering, Christ ascended back to the mountain monastery where he had spent his missing years. Therefore, no matter how the Bible story of the resurrection is viewed, the miracle is that God did in fact save Christ's life.
So are you saying that the historical meaning in the stories are as relevant for you as the metaphorical?
For me, the most convincing truth of Christ's divinity is that by any measure, after 2,000 years, he stands as the greatest, most perfect, and powerfully positive, influential, and consequential person who ever lived on this planet. His messages of love, forgiveness, and direct access to God, as well as his promise of salvation and everlasting life through him, plus his willingness to suffer agonizing death on the cross for our sins, are all the persuasion I need to emphatically believe that Jesus Christ is the divine Son of God.
Again, Captain, how do the miracles figure in your faith?
Since I believe in God and Christ's fulfillment of his promise of the Holy Spirit, and as I consider the miracles of God's creations, and as I have had close personal experience with the Holy Spirit throughout my adult life, I surely believe with all my heart that anything is possible with God. Therefore, I do not harbor doubts about the New Testament miracles. Anticipating your next question, however, I will add that if Barbara Thiering's theories were to become proven facts, my faith would in no degree be altered.
How were you able to settle your consideration of Christ's miracles?
Exposure to academic Bible-based sermons experienced beginning 12 years ago by non-denominational Christian church preachers. It was significant for me to be reminded, for example, that the Old Testament has over 700 precisely detailed and fulfilled prophecies of the Messiah's coming.
How did it happen that you overcame your bias against churches to renew attendance, Captain?
10 years ago, I had a passionate affair with the widow of a squadron mate who happened to be a devout, born-again, fundamentalist Christian who led me to attend the wonderful non-denominational Christian church in my neighborhood.
A passionate affair in your 80s with a church lady. Goodness, how did that happen?
A providential series of events at a crucial crossroad in our lives. But let's not jump ahead now. There are many providential adventures to relate, and little time to cover my story's next 70 years with Jean. We have gone astray on a discourse perhaps of little interest to readers. Nevertheless, the topic is relevant to the aim of recording my biography.
Understood, Captain. I have the feeling that we will cover more religious ground before we finish. Meanwhile, let's go back to Georgia in the mid-40s on a lighter topic. Did you continue building model airplanes?
Well, Mike, that is a lighter topic for sure. Not much modeling during the war. Balsa wood and related model materials were unavailable, so I worked on perfecting designs of kites and hand-launched folded paper airplanes. I tied a 10-foot string through holes in the wingtips of small recognition models and flew them in a circle. When the war ended, I quickly got into gas engine-powered control line models, a natural step up from the recognition models. I had the encouraging success of winning first place in my first contest with my first control line model, 55 miles an hour in a tri-state Class A speed event with a $25 engine as first prize. As it turned out, this was my beginning in lifelong competitions in both model and full-size cars, boats, and airplanes.
Wasn't that about the time of your first flight in the real thing, Captain?
Yes, it was, Mike. One fine Sunday afternoon, my friend Jerry and I biked to a small grass strip airfield where they were giving $2 10-minute rides in a 3-seat Piper Super Cruiser, as well as $5 rides in a 2-place glider. When we bought our $2 tickets for a Piper ride, we were told there would be a 30-minute wait. The glider was just being towed up, so we watched as it was released from the tow plane and soared peacefully. As it descended toward the airport, the nose of the glider dropped and it dove very steeply toward the runway. At the last second, the nose came up and the glider rounded out at about 10 feet above the runway. But the nose kept rising and rising until they went over the top of a loop and headed for the runway again for a second loop. As the glider recovered from the second loop, it made a tight circle to a graceful landing, rolling to a stop only a few feet away from us. When the pilot opened the canopy, we saw that his young soldier passenger was passed out cold in the back seat. Jerry and I were certainly impressed and damn glad we hadn't bought a ticket to fly with that pilot. After the passenger recovered enough to disembark, the pilot turned to us and asked, "Are you next?" "No, sir, we have tickets for the Piper." "That's me," he said. "Let's go." Jerry and I were stunned speechless, but it was too late to back out. So we climbed into the back seat, noting that the door had been removed. It seemed that we had barely gotten off the ground before we began doing every imaginable stunt in the book. Not that we recognized any of them. Jerry and I were thrown all over the cockpit and had no idea what was happening. We were pulled down into our seats at 3 times our weight. The sky and the ground swapped places over and over. We hung upside down in our seatbelts as I saw my hat on the cabin headliner. The next moment I was sure we would be thrown out the side of the airplane through the missing door space. The pilot never looked back, but he must have been having a great old time trying to make us sick, because it seemed like we kept up the aerobatics for eternity. Though the flight may actually have taken only the 10 minutes we paid for, it was way more than we had bargained for. Thankfully, Jerry and I somehow maintained consciousness and didn't throw up, but we were damn sure glad to get back on the ground in one piece. I don't recall that we even looked at the pilot, much less thank him, as we beat feet to our bikes and made our getaway post-haste.
Quite an introduction to flying, Captain. Did it turn you off?
Not at all, Mike, but I was disappointed not to have had a chance to appreciate simply being in the air straight and level for a minute or two. Soon after that, I had my second flight with another pilot in an Aeronca Champion. He put me in the front seat and even let me have some stick time flying it, which more than made up for what I missed on the first flight. Except for my dreams of levitation, flying was better than I had hoped it would be. Years before I flew my father's car from the back seat on our weekend drives through the hills and around the curves with his bandleader's baton for a control stick. I had a small book by Piper called How to Fly a Piper Cub, so I knew what I was doing.
Great, Captain. Let's see. You were in Columbus for 5 years, from age 11 to 16. You said the girls matured early there, and you had developed an infatuation for them at age 4. So how was your passage through puberty in Baker Village, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't mind at all. I already told you that I didn't actually get laid for another 10 years, so you know I couldn't have gotten into too much trouble. Actually, though, Mike, I could not possibly have had a better introduction to intimacy. Baker Village teen social life in those days mostly consisted of informal soda fountain gatherings after school and movies at the village theater in the evenings or weekend matinees. It was a great group of about 20 kids. We knew each other well, we were the same age, and we were at the same level of innocence. We felt little social pressure or undue self-consciousness, so we were quite relaxed with each other. No one was going steady. I was financially independent and unsupervised. Then, spontaneously it seemed, we began having summer Saturday evening picnics at the clearing on Joe's plantation property, at the very same clearing in the woods where we had burned down the cabin. Now we set roaring bonfires instead. Refreshments were knee-high grape and orange sodas, hot dogs, marshmallows, and watermelons. Sometimes we smoked Indian cigars, which were long, hard 8-inch pods that grew on trees, or rolled rabbit tobacco, a pale weed leaf we learned about as Boy Scouts. Pretty naughty stuff, smoking weed, huh? So after several of these gatherings, it seemed quite natural for the old spin the bottle game to be introduced. Getting to kiss all the girls under such conditions was absolute heaven for me, but one girl stood out. Her name was Elaine. She lived only 1 block away after we moved to our new home, several miles from Baker Village. She was Jewish, and her parents owned a dress shop, so she wore a new dress every day. Elaine was tall, thin, a little awkward, and a bit plain. Like me, she was a mediocre student and an only child. She was cheerful and outgoing, but the kids mistook her innocence and malapropos for a lack of intelligence. Elaine and I clicked. Kissing literally took our breath away, so we did it a lot. Long, slow, light kisses with only our lips touching for hours, days, weeks, months, years. Well, not exactly true, but touching was added very gradually. We didn't need to go further faster. What we were doing was all the fun we could stand, and there was no risk of ruining it. By the time I left Georgia 4 years later, we had progressed to being near nude in bed with advanced mutual touching. So of course there were times when the urge to proceed with the rough stuff was strong. Fortunately, one or the other of us always backed off in time. Oddly, though we were a long-term item, we did not go steady or speak of lasting commitment. We both kissed others as well. In fact, Elaine was such a good kissing teacher that I became quite popular with other girls. In part, I'm sure, because I could be trusted not to push it too far.
Sounds like you had a near-perfect adolescence, Captain.
Almost, Mike, except I hated getting up at 5 a.m. to deliver newspapers 7 mornings a week. What little money I made was reduced by having to put some of it into a savings account. I desperately wished to quit, but the only way Father would allow that was if I found another job. Meanwhile, I spent my first earnings on a Whizzer motorbike and 2 records. One was Tchaikovsky's first piano concerto. The other was Tex Ritter doing rye whiskey on one side with boll weevil on the other. Finally, when I was 15, I altered my birth certificate to indicate I was 16, so I could get a work certificate to take the job as usher at the Village Theater. I worked weekdays 5:30 to 11:30, with Wednesdays off, weekends 1:30 to 11:30. 44 hours a week for $17.39 an hour, plus a free pass to other theaters for my night off. Obviously, my social life became limited, and there was no time for homework. But I loved movies, and there was a significant fringe benefit. Since the Village Theater was a social center for all my friends, it was a simple matter to let the girls in free and conduct backstage tours where I demonstrated my well-known watch that glowed in the dark. Our movie screen was made of material with thousands of small holes in it, which we could see clearly through from backstage. The best part of my tour was kissing and hugging behind the screen, unseen by the audience watching the movie, but appearing to be watching us. The last time Elaine and I had alone, before I left Georgia, she suggested that we end the way we began, with long, light kissing without the touching. It was a perfect end to a wonderful relationship. Fond memories to this day.
How great for you both, Captain. Did you keep in touch with Elaine or ever see her again?
We did not correspond, but I did see her one time again when we returned from Germany 3.5 years later. I'll get to that.
Okay. How did you feel about moving to Germany, Captain? You lived in Columbus longer than anywhere before, and through your most important development years. Weren't you going to miss it?
Hell no. Leaving Columbus was the best move of my life, Mike, and just in time. Bad birds were building nests in my hair, and I was heading down a dead-end path. I seriously doubt that I would have made it to college, or any of the rest to follow. Elaine would have gotten pregnant, and we would have married. I would probably have been a truck driver. Moving meant a new opportunity to clear away the bird nests, reinvent myself, get back on track, and start over.
A good stopping point for us today, too, I think, Captain. Shall we resume tomorrow morning? Same time and place?
Lord willing, Mike. Did you say anything to Georgie about my Liberty Pass to the airport?
Yes, but I didn't tell her where we might go. She just wants to know when we leave and plan to return.
Okay, take this Shamango handbook and look it over. I have another one, so you can hang on to that copy while you're here. And here's Transition to Gliders, a training manual for power pilots. Aerodynamically, sailplanes are very sophisticated airplanes, and soaring is an entirely unique and challenging sport. Next to levitation, it is as close to being a bird as you can get. Although gliders are so safe and simple to fly, you can solo at age 14, but it takes a lifetime to perfect the art and science of soaring. Every day and location is different, and no one knows all there is to learn about soaring. As gliders go, the Shimango is a relatively large, heavy, and complex airplane. The wings unfold from 33 feet to 59 feet, about 12 feet more than most gliders, whereas most gliders weigh about 600 pounds and have a single wheel. Shimango's max is 1,700 pounds, and the conventional tail dragger landing gear is manually retractable. It takes some muscle to retract the landing gear, so that will be one of your co-pilot jobs if we fly. Of course, hanging an engine on a glider adds all the complexity of a power plane too. Plus, the Shimango has a manually operated 3-position propeller: climb pitch, cruise pitch, and feathered when the engine is shut down. So the Shimango is a much more complex airplane than the Champ you've been flying. You're pretty busy on takeoff and climb out.
Thanks for the books, Captain. I'll read them carefully.
No need to memorize, Mike. Just skim through the handbook. Procedures and limitations are highlighted. Read the transition manual at your leisure. Since my partner Jerry and I bought her in 2005, I have accumulated over 2,000 hours in this bird. It's like a part of me when I strap in, so I'll keep you safe. I'll see you here in the morning.